Welcome to Your Classical Storytime. I'm Inés, with our telling of the Slavic fairy tale Sivka-Burka, featuring music by Aida Isakova and Nikolai Medtner. Once upon a time, there was an old man who lived on a big farm with his 3 sons. The oldest son handled all of the business of the farm, and the middle brother handled all the heavy lifting and farm work. Ivan, the youngest, was never invited to participate. He wasn't very good at business or lifting heavy things. Instead, he liked to go off into the forest to collect mushrooms or read books. One day, the father became ill.
When I'm dead, please visit my grave 3 nights in a row, so that I may see my dear sons once again,
The old man said. Soon after, the old man died and was buried in a grave deep in the forest. That same night, the oldest son was supposed to visit the grave like his father asked, but he was very busy, so he asked Ivan.
Will you take my place tonight and go to father's grave? If you do, I'll buy you some gingerbread.
Ivan agreed and went to his father's grave. At midnight, his father's ghost rose out of the ground.
Who is there? Is it you, my oldest son?
He asked.
No, father, it is I, your youngest son.
Ivan answered. Ivan and his father chatted for a while, and then his father sunk back into his grave. Ivan then made his way home, gathering mushrooms as he went. The next night, it was the second brother's turn to go to the grave, but he still had to load some hay into the barn.
Ivan, will you go visit father in my place?
He asked.
I will make you a pair of shoes if you do.
Once again, Ivan agreed. At midnight, his father's spirit rose from the earth.
Who is there? Is it you, my second son?
He asked.
No, father, it is I, your youngest son.
Said Ivan. After they talked for a while, the father returned to his grave and Ivan went home, picking mushrooms as he went. The next night, it was Ivan's turn to go to the grave. At midnight, his father's ghost rose out of the ground.
Who is there?
He asked.
Is it you, my youngest son?
Yes, it is I, Ivan.
Then his father said,
You're the only son who has done as I asked. Because of this, I will give you a special gift, a magic horse. Next time you go out into the open field, say, Sivka-Burka, magic horse, come when I call you. A horse will come to you, crawl into its right ear and out of its left, and you will be turned into a handsome young man. Get on the horse and ride it.
Ivan thanked his father and gave him one last hug. He then walked home, gathering mushrooms as he went. Ivan went straight to bed and said nothing about the horse to his brothers. The very next morning, the brothers heard some exciting news. All young men who were not married were asked to come to the castle courtyard. The princess, who was smart and funny, had decided she was ready to start dating. The princess planned to sit at a small window at the top of a very tall tower and wait until a young man riding a horse jumped up and gave her a high five as he passed. The fellow who could do this would earn a date with the princess. Ivan's brothers decided to try their luck. They gave their horses a hefty breakfast, dressed themselves in their fanciest clothes, and combed their hair. Ivan, who was sitting on the hearth by the fireplace, said,
Brothers, take me with you to try my luck. Oh, Ivan,
his oldest brother said,
the princess won't be interested in a foolish kid like you.
The older brothers rode off to the castle. Ivan picked up a bridle and went out into the open field and said the magical words.
Sivka-Burka, magic horse, come when I call.
The earth trembled under its hooves. Flames streamed from its nose and smoke rose from its ears. It stood tall and then bowed before Ivan, who stroked its neck and bridled it. Then Ivan climbed into its right ear and out of its left. When he came out, he noticed he had on new fantastic clothes and an amazing haircut. He hopped onto Sivka-Burka and rode off to the castle. They flew over hills and valleys, through woods and forests, and the earth trembled under the horses' hooves. When Ivan rode into the castle courtyard, he found that the contest had already started. But the window was very high, and no one had been able to reach the princess. She sat reading a huge book about heroes and legends as she waited for someone to complete her challenge. Ivan's brothers tried. They didn't even make it halfway. Finally, it was Ivan's turn to try. Whooping and whistling, he urged Sivka-Burka to jump, and missed by only 2 feet. He turned his horse and flew up a second time, but missed by just 1 foot. For his final attempt, he circled around the courtyard and came towards the tower at a full gallop. Sivka-Burka jumped. Like a flame, he flew up to the little window, and Ivan tried to high-five the princess as they went past. But the princess, distracted by her book, stuck out her hand but missed Ivan's hand, smacking him in the head instead. She saw that her ring had left a big red mark on his forehead. As Ivan galloped away, she yelled, "Quick, stop that man!" But he was already gone. When he came back into the open field, he slipped into the horse's left ear and out of its right. Voila! He was his old, messy, sooty self. He quickly tied a rag around his head to hide the princess's mark, patted Sivka-Burka, and thanked him before letting him go. When his brothers got home, they told him everything that had happened. They mentioned the dashing young man who had reached the princess, and Ivan asked,
What if I was that handsome young man?
Right.
They laughed.
Ivan, don't be silly. Sit on the hearth and eat your mushrooms.
The next day, there was a banquet at the castle. As his brothers got dressed to attend, Ivan asked to go with.
Ivan,
They answered,
you would only make the people laugh with your silly stories and daydreams. Sit on the hearth and eat your mushrooms.
The 2 brothers rode off on horseback, and Ivan set out on foot after them. He got to the castle just as the banquet began, and found a seat in the last chair in a corner. The princess walked around, speaking to every guest and offering them a warm welcome, and checking their foreheads for the special mark. Finally, she got to Ivan. His clothes were plain, his face was sooty, and his hair was a mess. Nevertheless, she said, "Hello, welcome to my grand banquet. Who are you, and why is your forehead bandaged?"
I am Ivan the Fool,
He answered,
and I accidentally fell on a rug this morning.
but the princess felt something familiar in Ivan's eyes, and took the rag off his forehead, revealing the mark of her ring. "That's my mark," she cried. "You are the dashing young man from yesterday." The princess's father came up, looked at Ivan, and said,
Him? But he is covered with soot.
Ivan, blushing in embarrassment, shrugged and said,
Let me clean up. Maybe you'll change your mind.
He went out into the courtyard and called.
Sivka-Burka, magic horse, come when I call.
Instantly, Sivka-Burka came galloping up, making the ground tremble under its hoofs. Shabby, sooty Ivan crawled into its right ear, and dashing, stylish Ivan crawled out of its left. The very next day, the princess and Ivan spent an entire afternoon talking about books, picking mushrooms, and telling stories. It was the first of many lovely afternoons for Ivan and the princess. all thanks to Ivan's father and the magic horse, Sivka-Burka. The end. Thanks for listening to Your Classical Storytime. If you'd like to explore the rest of our library, visit yourclassical.org/storytime.